Garrett Vance's hand closed around Cole Brennan's collar, yanking him halfway across the booth while his 8-year-old daughter watched in frozen terror. The drunk businessman sneered, spittle flying as he shouted threats 6 inches from Cole's face. Threats about teaching lessons, about showing respect, about what happens to weak men who interfere. Cole's sleeve rode up as Garrett shook him harder. The tattoo appeared. Black ink, Delta Force insignia, serial number beneath crossed arrows. Garrett's eyes flicked to it for half a second, then dismissed it with a laugh. "Nice fake ink, wannabe hero?" At the corner table, a retired colonel's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips, his face draining white as he recognized what that mark truly meant. Cole's voice dropped to something cold and final. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." In the next 60 seconds, this small-town diner would witness exactly why 47 confirmed kills wasn't just a number on a classified file, and why some tattoos are earned in blood, not bought in parlors. 30 minutes earlier, the Sunday morning sun had filtered through Miller's diner windows in lazy, golden streams, catching dust motes that drifted like memories through the breakfast rush. Cole Brennan pushed open the glass door, his hand automatically finding the small of Harper's back, guiding his daughter toward their usual booth by the window. The bell above the door chimed, a sound that had greeted 3 generations of this Georgia town, a sound that meant pancakes and strong coffee, and the kind of ordinary peace Cole had spent 3 years learning to trust again. Harper's sneakers squeaked against the black and white checkered floor, her ponytail bouncing as she skipped ahead, already knowing where they would sit. She slid into the red vinyl booth, her small hands reaching for the laminated menu she had memorized months ago. Cole settled across from her, his shoulders instinctively angled toward the door, old habits carved too deep to fade completely. He wore a long-sleeved flannel shirt despite the late spring warmth, the fabric concealing the ink that mapped a life he had left behind. At 38, his face carried lines that had nothing to do with age, and everything to do with choices made in the dark. But when Harper looked up at him, with eyes the exact shade of her mother's, that soft hazel that caught the light, those lines softened into something gentler, something that resembled the man he was trying to become. The diner hummed with the comfortable chaos of a Sunday morning, the hiss of the griddle, the clink of silverware, the low murmur of conversations blending into white noise that felt safer than silence. Melissa approached their table, her blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, the kind worn by women who had learned to manage life with one hand while holding a coffee pot in the other. She was 26, maybe 27, with the particular weariness around her eyes that Cole recognized, the look of a parent doing it alone. "Morning, you two," she said, her smile genuine despite the exhaustion. "Let me guess, Harper. Chocolate chip pancakes with extra whipped cream?" Harper nodded enthusiastically, her gap-toothed grin making Melissa laugh. Cole ordered his usual: black coffee, scrambled eggs, wheat toast. The disciplined breakfast of a man still measuring portions from muscle memory. Melissa scribbled on her pad, and as she turned away, Harper reached across the table to grab the sugar packets, building a small pyramid the way she did every Sunday. These rituals mattered. These small, predictable moments were the foundation Cole was building, brick by careful brick. He watched his daughter's concentration, the way her tongue poked out slightly as she balanced the last packet on top. 3 years since they had lost Rebecca to the cancer that had eaten through her with methodical cruelty. 3 years since Cole had walked away from Delta Force, from the missions that had defined him, from the brotherhood forged in gunfire and blood. The decision had not been difficult. Rebecca needed him, Harper needed him, and the things he had done in desert cities and mountain compounds had already cost enough. He had resigned quietly, accepting the honorable discharge without ceremony, trading tactical gear for flannel shirts and school pickup schedules. The nightmares came less frequently now. The startle reflex had dimmed. Most days he could look in the mirror and see a father instead of a killer. Most days. The bell above the door chimed again, But this time the sound felt different, sharper, discordant. 3 men stumbled through the entrance, their laughter too loud, their movements carrying the loose-limbed arrogance of mid-morning drinking. Garrett Vance led them, his designer polo shirt untucked, his face flushed with bourbon and entitlement. Cole recognized the type immediately. Money without wisdom, power without responsibility, the kind of man who had never faced real consequences. Garrett's companions flanked him like pilot fish following a shark, smaller, meaner, feeding on reflected aggression. They took a booth near the counter, their voices cutting through the diner's peaceful hum like static through music. Several regulars glanced up, then quickly away, the instinctive response of people who had learned not to draw attention from predators. Melissa approached their table with practiced professionalism, her smile firmly in place, despite the tension in her shoulders. Cole watched from his peripheral vision, his coffee cup halfway to his lips, every sense suddenly alert in a way he had not felt since leaving the teams. Garrett's hand shot out as Melissa reached for her order pad, his fingers wrapping around her wrist with casual brutality. "Well, hey there, sweetheart," he slurred, pulling her closer. "How about you forget those menus and bring us some real service?" His companions laughed, the sound wet and ugly. Melissa tried to pull away, her professional mask cracking into something closer to fear. "Sir, please let go," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the tremor Cole could hear beneath the words. Garrett's grip tightened, his other hand moving toward her hip. The diner went quiet, conversations dying mid-sentence as people registered what was happening and made the coward's calculation, "Not my problem, not my fight." Cole set down his coffee cup with deliberate care, the ceramic meeting the table without sound. Harper looked up, her small face creasing with confusion as she sensed the shift in atmosphere. "Daddy?" she whispered. Cole met her eyes, keeping his voice gentle. "It's okay, baby. Stay here." He stood, his movements fluid despite the 3 years away from combat, his body remembering what his mind tried to forget. He crossed the diner in 5 strides, awareness expanding to take in exit points, potential weapons, the position of bystanders. Training never truly left. It just waited beneath the surface like scar tissue, ready to tear open under pressure. He stopped beside Garrett's booth, his voice calm and measured. "Let her go." 3 words. Simple. Clear. Carrying the weight of absolute certainty, Garrett's head swiveled slowly, his alcohol-dulled eyes taking a long moment to focus on Cole's face. Then he laughed, a harsh, braying sound that his friends immediately echoed. "What did you say to me?" He released Melissa's wrist with a shove that sent her stumbling backward. She caught herself against the counter, her hand automatically rising to rub the red marks blooming on her skin. Garrett stood, his 6'2" frame carrying the kind of bulk that came from expensive gyms and protein shakes, not functional strength. He was used to people backing down, used to his father's badge and his family's money smoothing away problems before they became real. He stepped into Cole's space, close enough that the bourbon on his breath was overwhelming. "You got a problem, old man? Want to play hero in front of your little brat over there?" Cole did not move, did not blink. His voice remained level, empty of emotion, the voice he had used in interrogation rooms and hostage negotiations. "I'm asking you once more. Walk away." But even as he said it, he knew how this would end, could feel it in the electric tension singing through his muscles, in the way his heartbeat had dropped into combat rhythm. Slow, steady, primed. Garrett's face flushed darker, veins standing out on his neck. "Or what?" He punctuated the question by shoving Cole hard in the chest. Not a tactical push, just the clumsy aggression of a drunk bully used to smaller victims. But the shove was enough to make Harper gasp from her booth, enough to cross the line Cole had drawn in his mind, enough to wake the part of him that had ended 47 lives across 13 countries. Garrett grabbed Cole's collar with both hands, yanking him forward with surprising strength. The flannel fabric bunched, pulling tight across Cole's shoulders as Garrett hauled him half across the booth. "I'm going to teach you some respect," Garrett snarled, his face inches away, spittle flying with each word. He shook Cole like a dog with a toy, violent and erratic. "You think you can talk to me that way? You know who my father is? You know what I can do to you?" Each shake grew harder, fueled by rage and alcohol and the assumption that this tired-looking single dad would crumple under pressure. Cole let himself be shaken, his body loose, absorbing the motion. Waiting, watching, calculating angles and vulnerabilities with the cold precision that had made him one of Delta's most efficient operators. The sleeve of Cole's flannel rode up his forearm as Garrett's grip twisted the fabric. Black ink appeared against tanned skin. The tattoo emerged in stages. First the distinctive Delta symbol, then the serial number beneath it, then the crossed arrows that marked special operations, then the small cluster of stars that represented something most civilians would never understand. It was not large or ostentatious. Delta Force operators did not advertise, but to anyone who knew, it was unmistakable. A combat badge earned through selection rates that hovered near 5%. A mark that said this man had operated in the shadows where official wars never reached. Garrett's eyes flickered down for half a second, his brain processing the image through an alcohol haze. Then he laughed, harsh and dismissive. "Nice fake ink, wannabe hero. What, you buy that off the internet? Think it makes you special?" But across the diner, at a corner table half hidden behind a newspaper, Colonel Raymond Fletcher's hand froze with his coffee cup suspended in midair. The newspaper crumpled slightly as his grip tightened involuntarily. He was 63, retired Army, 35 years of service that had taken him from platoon leader in Desert Storm to Joint Task Force Command in Afghanistan. He knew that tattoo. Had signed enough classified after-action reports featuring men who wore variations of it. His face drained of color as recognition crashed through him like ice water. That was not a fake. That was not something bought in a parlor or copied from the internet. That was real, which meant the quiet single dad getting shaken by a drunk idiot was not what he appeared to be. Fletcher's mind raced through possibilities, trying to place the face, the build, the age. Delta operators were ghosts by design. No photos, no records, no public acknowledgement. But sometimes, in certain circles, stories circulated. And one story in particular suddenly crystallized in Fletcher's memory. Cole's voice cut through the chaos, dropping to a register that bypassed conscious thought and spoke directly to primal survival instinct. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." The words carried no heat, no anger, just absolute certainty. The temperature in the diner seemed to drop. Garrett's laughter faltered, some animal part of his brain finally recognizing danger despite the bourbon dulling his senses. His grip on Cole's collar loosened fractionally. That was all the opening needed. Cole moved, not the wild flailing of a bar fight, but the economical brutality of a man trained to end threats with maximum efficiency and minimum waste. His right hand came up in a tight arc, palm striking the underside of Garrett's wrist, breaking the grip with precise application of pressure to the nerve cluster. Simultaneous with the strike, Cole's left hand shot forward, fingers rigid, driving into the soft tissue just below Garrett's solar plexus. Not hard enough to rupture organs, but hard enough to paralyze the diaphragm, forcing the air from Garrett's lungs in a whooping gasp. Garrett stumbled backward, his face going purple as his body forgot how to breathe. His hands clutched at his chest, eyes wide with sudden panic and pain. The transformation from aggressor to victim took less than 2 seconds. Cole did not pursue, did not press the advantage. He simply stood, his breathing unchanged, his posture relaxed, waiting to see if the lesson had been learned. But Garrett's 2 companions were already moving, their alcohol-fueled bravado overriding any survival instinct. The first one, A heavy-set man in a polo shirt stretched tight over a gym-built chest charged from the left, telegraphing his punch with the obvious wind-up of someone whose fighting experience came entirely from movies. Cole sidestepped with minimal movement, his left hand catching the incoming fist and redirecting it past his shoulder, using the attacker's momentum against him. As the man stumbled forward, off balance, Cole's right elbow snapped backward into the exposed ribs, a short, brutal strike that cracked bone with an audible snap. The man went down, clutching his side, his aggressive roar transforming into a high-pitched wheeze. The second companion showed slightly more caution, circling wide, hands raised in a boxer's stance that suggested some actual training. Cole tracked him with economical head movements, body squared, weight balanced. The man feinted left, then drove forward with a right cross aimed at Cole's jaw. Good technique, proper form, but civilian speed, civilian timing. Cole slipped inside the punch, his left arm rising to block, while his right hand drove 3 rapid strikes into the man's exposed kidney. Medical precision, nerve clusters, and soft tissue, the kind of targeting that came from training designed to incapacitate, not impress. The man folded like wet paper, vomiting onto the diner floor as his body responded to trauma. 8 seconds. 3 men down. Cole's flannel shirt was not even wrinkled. The diner erupted into chaos. A woman screamed. Someone's water glass shattered on the floor. Chairs scraped as people scrambled backward, pressing against walls, desperate to create distance from the violence. Cell phones appeared, a dozen different angles capturing the moment, uploading to social media feeds before the adrenaline even faded. Harper stood in her booth, her small hands pressed against her mouth, eyes enormous. Cole saw her terror, and something in his chest cracked apart. This was what he had wanted to avoid. This exact moment. His daughter watching him become the thing he had spent 3 years trying to bury. He took a step toward her, hands rising in a placating gesture, but movement exploded to his left. Garrett had recovered his breath, and with it, all the stupid, wounded pride of a man unused to humiliation. He came at Cole from behind, roaring incoherently, fist cocked back. Cole spun, dropping low, his right leg sweeping out in a tight arc that caught both of Garrett's ankles. The bigger man went down hard, his head bouncing off the checkered floor with a sound like a melon hitting pavement. But Garrett was not done. Rage and alcohol and 3 decades of never facing consequences drove him back to his feet. He reached down, his hand disappearing into his boot, emerging with something that glinted in the diner's fluorescent lighting. A knife. 4-inch blade, serrated edge, illegal in most states. The diner's collective gasp was audible. This had just escalated from assault to attempted murder. Garrett brandished the knife, his face twisted into something ugly and primitive. "I'm gonna kill you," he panted, blood running from his split lip. "Gonna kill you, then I'm gonna hurt that little brat of yours. Gonna make sure she remembers what happens to people who disrespect me." The threat hung in the air, poison spreading through the space. Cole's expression did not change, but something fundamental shifted behind his eyes. The last restraint, the final barrier between the father and the operator, dissolved like salt in water. He had killed for less than that threat, had ended lives for actions far smaller than threatening a child. His child. The muscles in his jaw bunched, the only visible sign of the transformation occurring beneath his skin. Garrett lunged forward, the knife leading, aiming for Cole's throat in a wide, amateur slash. Cole moved into the attack instead of away, his left hand catching Garrett's wrist, controlling the weapon. His right hand struck like a piston, throat, eyes, pressure points mapped by years of combatives training. Not the restrained strikes from moments before. Full power, full commitment, the intent to end the threat permanently. But before Cole's hand could complete its trajectory, a voice cut through the chaos like a whip crack. "Stand down, soldier!" The command carried 35 years of battlefield authority, the kind of voice that had directed artillery strikes and emergency medevacs and desperate last stands. Colonel Fletcher stood from his corner table, his newspaper forgotten, his entire bearing transformed from retired civilian to combat commander. The command hit Cole at a level below conscious thought, triggering responses drilled through years of military conditioning. His hand stopped, trembling, inches from Garrett's throat. His grip on Garrett's wrist remained locked, but the killing strike paused, suspended between execution and mercy. Cole's head turned toward the voice, his eyes unfocused, caught between two worlds, the diner and the dozen battlefields overlaid on his vision, like ghostly transparencies. Fletcher approached with careful, measured steps, his hands visible, his voice dropping to a calmer register. "That's right, I see you, soldier. I see you." He stopped 10 feet away, positioning himself where Cole could see him without turning. "Look at my face. Read my rank. That's a command, not a request." Cole's eyes slowly focused, tracking to the older man's face, cataloguing details, the bearing, the physical fitness despite retirement, the specific way he held himself. Military, senior officer, credible authority. Cole's breathing began to slow, the red haze of combat fugue starting to recede. Fletcher took another careful step. "I need you to release the subject and step back. Can you do that for me?" His tone was firm but not aggressive, the voice of a commander who understood PTSD and combat conditioning. Cole's fingers loosened incrementally, releasing Garrett's wrist. The knife clattered to the floor. Cole stepped back, his hands rising away from his body in a gesture of compliance. Garrett collapsed to his knees, gasping, his knife hand shaking. But even terrified, his mouth would not stop. "You saw that! You all saw that! He tried to kill me! I want him arrested! I want him—" Fletcher's glare cut him off mid-sentence. "Son, you shut your mouth before I have you charged with assault with a deadly weapon, terroristic threats against a minor, and public intoxication." He pulled out his phone, photographing the knife on the floor, the visible injuries on Melissa, the defensive wounds on Cole's hands. "I have 36 witnesses who watched you attack this man, threaten his child, and draw a weapon. You want to press charges? Let's see how that works out when your father has to recuse himself from the case." Fletcher's attention returned to Cole, his expression shifting to something closer to recognition. "I need your name, soldier, for the record." Cole's jaw worked silently for a moment, wrestling with exposure, with consequences, with the weight of bringing his past into Harper's present. But there was no avoiding it now. The secret was already broken. "Cole Brennan," he said quietly. "Captain, Delta Force. Resigned." The words fell into the diner's silence like stones into still water. Fletcher's eyes widened fractionally, pieces clicking together. "Brennan, Silver Star for valor in Mosul. Distinguished Service Cross for the Kabul Embassy Rescue. The op in Syria—" He stopped, reading the pain that flashed across Cole's face. "I heard about Syria. Heard you walked away after." Cole nodded once, sharp and final. "I killed an innocent, 8-year-old boy caught in crossfire. I made the call. I pulled the trigger. That was the end for me." The confession spilled out, 3 years of guilt compressed into 3 sentences. Around the diner, phones continued recording, capturing every word. Harper stood frozen in the booth, her pancakes forgotten, her world tilting on an axis she did not understand. Her father, her quiet, gentle father who read her bedtime stories and braided her hair and helped with math homework, had just put 3 grown men on the ground without breaking a sweat. And now he was talking about killing people. About war. About things that belonged in movies, not in their small, safe life. Cole saw her confusion, and something inside him shattered completely. He took a step toward her, then stopped, unsure if she would even want him close. "Harper, baby, But Harper surprised him. She ran, not away, but toward him, her small body colliding with his legs, her arms wrapping around his waist with desperate strength. "That man was going to hurt you," she said into his shirt, her voice muffled and fierce. "He said he'd hurt me. You stopped him." Simple 8-year-old logic, untainted by complexity. Bad man threatened, dad protected. Everything else was details. The sound of sirens grew in the distance, multiple vehicles converging on the diner. Fletcher holstered his phone, his expression grim. "That was not your fault, what happened in Syria. Command should never have put you in that position." Cole shook his head, Harper still clinging to him. "I made the call. I live with it." Fletcher studied him for a long moment, seeing past the flannel shirt and the tired eyes to the operator beneath. "You live with it by being a father, by showing up, by protecting people when you could walk away." He gestured at Melissa, at the other diners, at Harper. "That is how you earn redemption, Captain. Not by punishing yourself, but by being better every day." The sirens cut off outside, doors slamming, voices calling instructions. Sheriff's deputies entered, hands near weapons, scanning for active threats. Fletcher raised his hands, calling out his name and rank, establishing authority before the situation could escalate. The lead deputy, a woman in her 40s with sergeant stripes, took in the scene with practiced assessment. 3 men on the ground, 1 bleeding, a knife on the floor, a child, a crowd of witnesses all holding up phones. "Someone want to tell me what happened here?" 30 voices tried to answer at once, a chaos of contradictory details and excited recounting. Fletcher's voice cut through the noise. "Sergeant, I'm Colonel Raymond Fletcher, Army retired. I witnessed the entire incident. These 3 men," he indicated Garrett and his companions, "initiated assault, battery, sexual harassment, and terroristic threats. The subject you see standing is Cole Brennan, a decorated Delta Force veteran who responded with appropriate defensive force. I have video documentation and 3 dozen corroborating witnesses." The sergeant's expression shifted subtly, reading subtext. Delta Force. That explained the efficiency and the damage control. She keyed her radio, requesting additional units and an ambulance, then approached Cole carefully. "Mr. Brennan, I need you to stay right where you are while we sort this out. Can you do that?" Cole nodded, his arms still around Harper, who refused to release him. The sergeant's partner moved to secure Garrett and his friends, reading rights and checking injuries. Melissa approached the sergeant with visible tension, holding out her wrist to show the bruises already forming. "He grabbed me, wouldn't let go. Said things, inappropriate things. Mr. Brennan asked him to stop. That man," she pointed at Garrett, "threw the first punch. Then his friends jumped in. Then he pulled a knife and threatened the little girl." Her testimony was clear and damning, corroborated by the nods of every nearby diner patron. The sergeant's expression hardened. This was not going to be a difficult case. The evidence was overwhelming. The witnesses were credible. The aggressor was the chief's son, which meant politics. But the facts were the facts. Paramedics arrived, assessing injuries with professional detachment. Garrett's friend had 2 cracked ribs. The other had soft tissue damage and a possible concussion. Garrett himself showed signs of whiplash and minor head trauma. All 3 would survive, though their pride had taken fatal wounds. Cole's hands were unmarked except for slight redness across the knuckles, the mark of controlled strikes, not wild brawling. The sergeant interviewed him separately, taking his statement while Harper sat with Melissa, who had brought over the long, cold pancakes and fresh hot chocolate. Cole recounted the incident in precise, clinical detail, the kind of after-action report he had filed dozens of times. No embellishment, no justification, just facts in chronological order. When he reached the part about the Syria mission, his voice dropped. I resigned from Delta 3 years ago. Not because I was injured, or because of age. Because I killed a civilian. A child. Wrong call, wrong intel, right execution. That boy's death is on me. The sergeant's pen paused on her notepad. That's not in my jurisdiction, Mr. Brennan. What I need to know is whether you used appropriate force today. Cole met her eyes. I used the minimum force necessary to end the threat to my daughter and to the other people in this diner. I could have killed all 3 of them in under 10 seconds. I chose not to. That is the only restraint that matters. The honesty in his voice was absolute. No bravado, no machismo, just the truth delivered by a man who knew exactly what he was capable of. The sergeant nodded slowly, making a note. Based on witness statements and video evidence, I'm inclined to believe you, but the district attorney will make the final call. For now, you're free to go. We'll need you to come in tomorrow for a formal statement. Cole nodded, already feeling the adrenaline crash beginning, the tremor starting in his hands that would progress to full-body shakes once the shock wore off. Fletcher approached as the sergeant moved away to coordinate with her team. Captain, you have resources available? Someone to talk to about what just happened? Cole shook his head. I've been managing on my own. Fletcher's expression turned stern. That ends now. You do not get to carry this alone anymore. He pulled out a business card, pressing it into Cole's hand. That's the number for a veteran support group I run. We meet Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Guys like you, guys like us, who came back carrying weight, PTSD, survivor's guilt, transition struggles. You call that number, you show up, and you talk. That is not a suggestion, Captain. That is an order from a superior officer. Cole looked at the card, emotions warring across his face. Part of him wanted to refuse, to maintain the isolation that felt safer than vulnerability. But Fletcher's expression allowed no argument. Yes, sir, he said quietly, the response automatic after years of service. Harper appeared at his side, tugging his hand. Can we go home now, Daddy? Her voice was small but steady, processing trauma the way children did, compartmentalizing, seeking normalcy. Cole lifted her into his arms, despite her being too old for it, needing the contact as much as she did. Yeah, baby, we can go home. Fletcher watched them for a moment, then spoke quietly. What you did today, Brennan, protecting people who could not protect themselves, that is who you are. Not Syria, not the mistakes. This, right here. Remember that when the nightmares come. Cole nodded, not trusting his voice. He carried Harper toward the exit, past the overturned chairs and the gawking crowd, and the police tape being strung across the crime scene. Melissa caught his arm as he passed. Thank you, she whispered, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Thank you for standing up. Cole could only nod, words failing him. Outside, the morning sun was too bright, too normal, completely at odds with the violence of the past 15 minutes. Cole set Harper down gently, holding her hand as they walked to his truck. His hands were shaking now, the adrenaline dump hitting hard. He fumbled with the keys, dropping them once before managing to unlock the door. Harper climbed into her booster seat without prompting, her eyes watching him with new awareness. She had seen something today, something that could not be unseen. The drive home was silent, broken only by the radio playing quietly. Cole's mind replayed the confrontation in endless loop, cataloging mistakes, analyzing responses, seeing a dozen ways it could have gone worse. The knife at Garrett's throat, the killing strike that had been seconds from completion, the edge he had walked between protection and murder. Fletcher's command had pulled him back, but what about next time? What if there was no voice of authority to break through the combat fugue? At home, Cole went through the motions of normalcy with mechanical precision. He made lunch. Harper ate half a sandwich, her appetite killed by stress. He suggested a movie, and she nodded, curling against him on the couch. But 20 minutes in, she spoke without looking away from the screen. "Daddy, are you a superhero?" The question was so unexpected, so perfectly childlike in its framing, that Cole almost laughed. "No, baby. I'm just a man who learned to fight a long time ago." Harper considered this. "The scary man said bad things. You made him stop. That seems like what heroes do." Cole's throat tightened. Heroes do not have to hurt people to stop them. I wish I had found another way. Harper finally looked up at him, her small face serious. "But you tried talking first. You asked him to stop. He did not listen, so you made him listen the only way left." 8-year-old wisdom, cutting through complexity to reach truth. The rest of Sunday passed in strange suspension, reality feeling thin and fragile. Cole's phone buzzed constantly, numbers he did not recognize, probably reporters who had gotten his information from the viral videos. He ignored them all. Around 4 in the afternoon, Fletcher called. "Wanted to give you a heads up. Video footage is all over social media. Local news wants comment. I've been fielding calls." Cole closed his eyes, leaning against the kitchen counter. "What are people saying?" Fletcher's voice carried grim amusement. "Mix of reactions, some calling you a hero, some worried about vigilante violence. The veteran community is rallying hard. You've got former military from 3 states vouching for your character. Garrett's father tried to make noise about charging you, but the evidence is too clear. He's been forced to recuse himself. District Attorney's Office indicated they'll likely charge Garrett with assault, battery, and weapons violations. You're clear." Relief and exhaustion hit Cole in equal measure. "Thank you for speaking up, sir. For stopping me before—" He did not finish the sentence. Fletcher understood. "That is what command does, Captain. We bring our people back from the edge. Speaking of which, Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. Support group meets at the Veterans Hall on Oak Street. I will be watching for you." The call ended before Cole could formulate a response. He stood in his quiet kitchen, Harper's artwork covering the refrigerator, her laughter drifting from the living room where she had returned to her movie. This was what he had built in 3 years. This fragile, precious normalcy. And today it had nearly shattered. But it had also survived. Bent, stressed, but not broken. Maybe that was enough. Maybe surviving the breaking was its own kind of redemption. Monday morning arrived with the surreal quality of everything having changed and nothing looking different. Cole made Harper breakfast, packed her lunch, drove her to school. But when they pulled into the parking lot, other parents stared. Some with admiration, some with wariness. Word had spread. Small towns held secrets like sieves held water. Cole walked Harper to her classroom, feeling eyes on his back. Her teacher, a kind woman named Patricia Reynolds, stopped him at the door. "Mr. Brennan, I saw the video. I want you to know what you did, protecting that woman and your daughter. That took courage." Cole wanted to argue, to explain it was not courage, but conditioning. But her sincerity stopped him. "Thank you," he said instead, the words feeling inadequate. Harper hugged him goodbye, whispering, "Love you, Daddy," before running to join her friends. Cole watched through the classroom window as other children clustered around her, asking excited questions about her dad fighting bad guys. She answered with surprising composure, her version of events already simplified into narrative. Bad men, scary moment, Dad protected everyone, police came. The drive to the sheriff's office for his formal statement felt longer than it should have. Cole parked in visitor parking, staring at the building for several minutes before forcing himself inside. The desk sergeant recognized him immediately, probably from the videos, and directed him to a conference room. The same female sergeant from Sunday arrived with a file folder and a digital recorder. "Mr. Brennan, this is just procedural. Walk me through yesterday's events one more time, and we'll get you out of here." Cole repeated his account, answering questions about his military background, his training, his assessment of threat levels. When asked directly if he had intended to kill Garrett Vance, Cole paused, choosing honesty over self-protection. When he threatened my daughter, yes. In that moment, I intended to eliminate the threat permanently. If Colonel Fletcher had not intervened, Garrett Vance would be dead. The sergeant's expression remained neutral, professional. But Fletcher did intervene. And you stopped. That control matters, Mr. Brennan. That is what separates defense from murder. The interview concluded after 90 minutes. Cole emerged from the sheriff's office into afternoon sunshine, feeling simultaneously drained and wired. His phone showed missed calls from Fletcher and several unknown numbers. He returned Fletcher's call first. "Brennan," the colonel answered on the first ring. "Good news. DA's office just announced charges against Vance and his associates. Assault, battery, harassment, weapons violations, terrorist threats. They're looking at serious time if convicted, though realistically they'll plea down. More importantly, you're officially clear. No charges, no investigation. It's over." Cole leaned against his truck, processing. "It does not feel over." Fletcher's voice gentled. "That is the PTSD talking, son. Your brain is still in threat mode, still waiting for the other shoe to drop. That is exactly why you need to be at that meeting tomorrow night. 7 o'clock. Be there." The line clicked off. Fletcher did not waste words on things already decided. Tuesday evening arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. Cole dropped Harper at his neighbor's house, a retired schoolteacher named Helen, who had been watching her occasionally since Rebecca's death. Helen knew about Sunday by now, of course, but her greeting held no judgment, only concern. "You take care of yourself tonight, Cole. That little girl needs her father." The Veterans Hall occupied a converted warehouse on Oak Street, its parking lot already half full when Cole arrived. He sat in his truck for 10 minutes, anxiety building. Walking through that door meant acknowledging he needed help, meant admitting the last 3 years of handling things alone had not been enough. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. Finally, Fletcher's command voice echoed in his memory. "That is an order from a superior officer." Cole forced himself out of the truck, across the parking lot, through the heavy metal door. Inside, folding chairs arranged in a circle hosted maybe 20 people, men and women ranging from their 20s to their 70s, representing every branch and era of service. Fletcher stood near a coffee pot, his face breaking into a genuine smile when Cole entered. "Glad you made it, Captain." He guided Cole to a chair, made introductions to nearby veterans. A Marine who had lost both legs in Fallujah, an Air Force pilot struggling with survivor's guilt after losing her crew, a Navy corpsman who could not stop seeing the faces of men who had died in his care. Each carried invisible wounds that made Cole's burden feel less isolating. The meeting began with check-ins, each person sharing briefly about their week. When it reached Cole, every eye turned to him with recognition. The diner incident had made veteran social media groups across the country. He cleared his throat. "I'm Cole, Captain, Delta Force, resigned 3 years ago. On Sunday I nearly killed a man in front of my 8-year-old daughter. I'm here because I need help making sure that never happens again." The room held silent for a heartbeat. Then the Marine with the prosthetic legs spoke. "Welcome home, brother. You are with your people now." And somehow, impossibly, that simple acknowledgement cracked something open in Cole's chest. The meeting continued for 2 hours. Stories shared, advice offered, phone numbers exchanged. Fletcher facilitated with the skill of someone who understood that healing was not linear, that progress came in tiny increments, measured across months and years. When the meeting ended, several veterans approached Cole, sharing their own stories of near misses and moments of lost control. A Green Beret who had almost beaten his brother-in-law to death during a PTSD episode. A Ranger who had pulled a gun on a neighbor during a fireworks display. Men and women who had walked the same edge and found their way back. Their survival became a map for Cole's own journey. Driving to pick up Harper, Cole felt something he had not experienced in 3 years. Hope. Not the fragile, desperate hope of early grief, but something steadier. The understanding that recovery was possible, that he did not have to carry everything alone, that asking for help was not weakness, but wisdom. He collected Harper from Helen's house, listening to her excited chatter about the puzzle they had completed, and felt the ordinary magic of fatherhood settle around him like armor. This was what mattered. These moments, this child, this life he was building from the wreckage of who he had been. The Syria mission would always be a scar, a permanent mark on his conscience. But maybe Fletcher was right. Maybe redemption was not about erasing mistakes, but about choosing better every day despite them. 2 weeks passed in a strange new rhythm. Cole attended both support group meetings, slowly learning to talk about Syria, about Rebecca's death, about the nightmares and the startle reflex and the constant feeling of waiting for catastrophe. Fletcher became something like a mentor, calling to check in, offering advice drawn from his own years of processing combat trauma. The legal situation resolved itself with surprising speed. Garrett and his companions accepted plea deals that involved substantial fines, community service, mandatory counseling, and restraining orders preventing them from contacting Cole, Harper, or Melissa. The video evidence had been too damning to fight. Local media attention faded as new stories emerged. Life returned to something resembling normal, though Cole noticed subtle changes. Other veterans nodded to him at the grocery store. Parents at Harper's school seemed more relaxed in his presence, seeing protector instead of threat. Melissa sent a thank you card with a gift certificate to Harper's favorite bookstore. On the 3rd Sunday after the incident, Cole woke to find Harper already dressed, waiting by the door. "Can we go to Miller's Diner for pancakes?" she asked, her tone carefully casual. Cole hesitated. Returning to the scene felt risky, potentially triggering. But Harper's expression held quiet determination. She needed to reclaim that space, to prove to herself it was safe again. "Yeah, baby, we can do that." The drive felt longer than usual, Cole's hands tight on the wheel. But when they walked through Miller's door, the bell chiming its familiar greeting, the anxiety in his chest eased. The diner had returned to normal. No crime scene tape, no overturned furniture, no lingering violence. Just breakfast smells and morning sunlight and the comfortable chaos of a Sunday rush. Several diners looked up, recognition flashing across their faces, but the looks held respect rather than fear. Melissa approached their usual booth with genuine warmth, her wrist still showing faint bruising, but her smile real. "Welcome back," she said simply. Harper ordered chocolate chip pancakes without hesitation, reclaiming her ritual. Cole ordered his usual, then noticed something new behind the counter, a framed photograph showing Melissa receiving an award, and beside it, a small plaque reading, "We support our veterans." Melissa followed his gaze. "Management decided to make it official, and I got promoted to manager. Apparently stopping workplace harassment impresses corporate." Her tone was light, but her eyes held gratitude that needed no words. Around the diner, Cole noticed other changes. A table of veterans wearing unit patches, gathering for what looked like a regular meetup. A new hire wearing a veteran-owned business name tag. Small shifts in the community's ecosystem, ripples from that Sunday's violence. Fletcher entered midway through breakfast, spotting Cole and approaching with a folder tucked under his arm. "Mind if I join you?" He slid into the booth without waiting for answer, his presence comfortable rather than intrusive. Harper eyed him with curiosity. "Are you the man who yelled at Daddy?" Fletcher's eyebrows rose, then he laughed. "Guilty as charged. I'm Ray Fletcher. You must be Harper." He extended a hand across the table with exaggerated formality. Harper shook it solemnly, her grip firmer than expected. Fletcher turned to Cole, sliding the folder across. "Got a proposition for you." Friend of mine runs a veteran employment and transition program. They need someone to teach basic self-defense and crisis management to newly transitioning vets. A lot of guys struggle with civilian life, end up in situations they do not know how to handle without violence. Pays decent, flexible hours, mostly evenings and weekends. Thought of you immediately. Cole opened the folder, scanning the job description and requirements. Teaching meant sharing knowledge without deploying it lethally. Meant giving back to the community that had rallied around him. Meant purpose beyond simply surviving each day. I don't have teaching credentials. Fletcher waved that away. You have something better. Real experience and the humility to admit when you have almost lost control. These kids do not need another instructor telling them they are warriors. They need someone showing them how to be civilians without forgetting their training. How to protect without destroying. That is you. Cole looked at Harper, who was watching him with serious attention. What do you think, baby? Should Daddy try teaching? Harper considered, her expression grave. If it helps people not be scared, then yes. Child logic, cutting through complexity to reach truth. Cole closed the folder. I'll call them tomorrow. Set up an interview. The conversation shifted to lighter topics. Fletcher's grandchildren, Harper's upcoming school play, the diner's new menu items. The ordinariness of it felt profound. A return to rhythms Cole had thought permanently disrupted. When breakfast ended, and Fletcher departed with promises to see Cole at Tuesday's meeting, Harper leaned across the table conspiratorially. I like Ray. He's nice. Cole smiled, the expression feeling more natural than it had in weeks. Yeah, he is. They left the diner into morning sunshine, Harper skipping ahead toward the truck. Cole paused on the sidewalk, looking back at Miller's diner, the scene of violence that had become the launching point for recovery, the place where his carefully constructed isolation had shattered, forcing him to accept help, to reconnect, to remember that redemption was not a destination, but a daily practice. In the truck, driving home with Harper humming along to the radio, Cole felt the tightness in his chest that had been constant since Rebecca's death, ease fractionally. The guilt about Syria would never fully disappear. 47 confirmed kills plus one innocent child formed a weight he would carry forever. But maybe the weight could be balanced by other actions, by teaching veterans to transition successfully, by raising Harper with honesty about mistakes and grace about recovery, by showing up at support group and speaking his truth, and accepting that healing was messy and non-linear, and sometimes required other people's strength when your own ran out. The nightmares would still come. The PTSD would still flare. But now he had tools beyond solitary endurance, had a community beyond isolation, had hope beyond mere survival. 3 months later, Cole stood in front of his first class of transitioning veterans, 12 men and women recently separated from service, struggling to find footing in civilian life. He had not prepared a speech, trusting that honesty would serve better than polish. My name is Cole Brennan, he began, his voice steady. 3 months ago, I almost killed a man in a diner while my 8-year-old daughter watched. I walked away from Delta Force 3 years before that, after making a call that killed an innocent child in Syria. I am not here to teach you to be better fighters. You already know how to fight. I am here to teach you how to be civilians who remember their training without being controlled by it. How to protect without destroying. How to live with what we have done and still build something worth protecting. It is the hardest mission you will ever face, and you cannot do it alone. I tried. It nearly destroyed me and my daughter. So rule 1, asking for help is not weakness. It is survival. The class listened with the intensity of people recognizing their own struggles reflected back. Over the following weeks, Cole taught them practical skills, de-escalation techniques, threat assessment, when to walk away, when to engage, how to recognize PTSD triggers before they caused harm. But more importantly, he taught by example, spoke openly about his failures and his ongoing recovery, brought Fletcher in to discuss long-term coping strategies, connected them with support groups and counseling resources and job placement programs, watched them begin the slow transformation from warriors to civilians without forgetting the lessons written in their bones. Some struggled more than others. A few dropped out, unwilling or unable to face the work, but most persisted, finding into the classroom a space to be honest about their struggles without judgment. Harper grew into the new normal with the resilience of childhood, her understanding of her father deepening in ways both beautiful and bittersweet. She knew now that Daddy had been a soldier, that he had fought bad people, that sometimes the fighting still lived inside him, and he had to work hard to keep it quiet. She attended a few family days at the Veterans Hall, playing with other military kids while the adults talked about things she did not fully understand. But she saw her father laughing more, sleeping better, the tension that had always hummed beneath his surface gradually easing. She heard him talk to her about mistakes and forgiveness and the importance of choosing kindness, even when anger felt easier. Lessons he was learning himself, passed down in real time. A year after the diner incident, Cole received an unexpected letter. The return address showed a law office in Washington, D.C. Inside, he found a formal notification that the Army was reviewing his resignation from Delta Force and the circumstances surrounding the Syria mission. New intelligence had emerged indicating the compound he had targeted had indeed housed enemy combatants who had used civilians as shields. The 8-year-old boy's death remained a tragedy, but command bore significant responsibility for faulty intelligence and inadequate support. The letter offered reinstatement with full rank and benefits if he wished to return to service. Cole read it 3 times, then filed it away without response. That life was finished. He had found something more important in teaching and fathering and the daily work of building peace instead of waging war. The letter changed nothing about his guilt, but it offered a kind of closure, acknowledgement that he had not been solely responsible, that the system had failed alongside his judgment. The anniversary of the diner incident arrived on another Sunday morning. Cole and Harper returned to Miller's Diner, a tradition now, their booth by the window waiting like an old friend. Melissa brought pancakes without needing to ask, her pregnancy beginning to show, a new beginning blooming from violence's aftermath. The diner had become a gathering place for the local veteran community, Fletcher's informal leadership turning it into something like a clubhouse. This morning, a young veteran Cole did not recognize sat alone at the counter, his body language screaming isolation and struggle. Cole recognized that posture, had worn it himself not long ago. He caught Fletcher's eye across the room, received a slight nod of encouragement. Cole stood, approaching the young man with the same care Fletcher had shown him. "First time here?" he asked. "The pancakes are incredible, and if you need someone to talk to, we have a group that meets Tuesday and Thursday nights. No pressure, just people who understand." The young veteran's eyes showed the particular desperation of someone drowning in transition, and in that moment, Cole understood Fletcher's gift to him, the opportunity to pass forward the grace he had received. The young man nodded slowly, accepting the lifeline without fully understanding it yet. Cole returned to his booth, to Harper and her chocolate chip pancakes and the morning sunlight streaming through windows. His daughter traced the Delta Force tattoo on his forearm, no longer hidden beneath long sleeves. "What does it mean again, Daddy?" she asked, a ritual question now. Cole smiled, the answer coming easier each time. "It means I fought for people who could not protect themselves. And it means I'll always fight for you, baby. But fighting does not always mean violence. Sometimes it means showing up, staying present, choosing better every single day." Harper considered this with 8-year-old, now 9-year-old, wisdom. "I think that's harder than the other kind of fighting." Cole pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You're absolutely right, and that is exactly why it matters more." Outside Miller's diner, the small Georgia town continued its Sunday morning rhythm. Church bells ringing, neighbors greeting each other, the ordinary miracle of community persisting despite and because of its flaws. Inside, Cole Brennan sat with his daughter and his found family of veterans and survivors, no longer hiding from his past, but no longer defined by it either. The tattoo on his arm marked who he had been, the man he was becoming. Father, teacher, friend, survivor, required no ink, only daily choice. Redemption was not a destination reached, but a direction traveled. One imperfect step after another, surrounded by people who understood that healing was not about erasing scars, but about building something beautiful despite them. And in the laughter of his daughter, and the warmth of community, and the possibility of helping another struggling veteran find their way home, Cole discovered that some battles were worth fighting not with violence but with presence, not with force but with grace, not with the weapons of war but with the harder, slower, more courageous work of peace. The end.